couple more things to say, just before we even, in the sort of preliminary stuff, before we even really get started. Um, Tragedy and Doom, I always use the same example because it upsets people, and I, again, may have said this already, still worth going over again. Hereditary. It's a horror movie called Hereditary, and Hereditary is a cool looking movie. The music's great, the acting is great, the editing is great. It was very scared. I was very scared while I was watching it. It does a lot of things right. The acting, the music, the editing. There's a lot of the cool stuff in there. It looks fucking great. Um, but fundamentally, it misunderstands the difference between tragedy and doom. It looks like it's a movie about poor choices made by people and how the choices that they make ruin their lives. That's a tragedy. Who they are and the choices that they make because of who they are. It looks like it's going to be a tragedy. And then at the end, it's revealed that basically a witch has been manipulating them the whole time. And so they didn't make those choices. They were sort of forced to by a spell. That's not tragedy, that's doom. And that's why I think that's a fundamentally bullshit movie, because it's not really about, it's not tragedy, it's doom. And doom, I hate to say this, but doom isn't really interesting. A story about a guy killed by a dragon who breathes fire or a witch who puts a curse on you, it's not interesting. Now you guys are thinking, hey, wait a minute, Macbeth had witches in it. But you notice that the witches in Macbeth didn't really tell Macbeth anything he wasn't thinking already, right? I mean, he was already thinking about killing the king, right? I mean, that one of the explanations we talked about this is that he's in his wife and him come up with a plan so quickly to kill the king. They don't even have to talk about it. They just can sort of talk around it. It feels like they've had this conversation before. And Macbeth is an ambitious person. Lady Macbeth is an ambitious person. This childless couple. It really feels like the witches came to Macbeth not because he was an innocent man and they wanted to put an evil idea in his head, but because he was a violent man filled with toxic masculinity who wants power. And his wife wants power, and it came to him. The witch. One way to think about the witches is that they're really just an externalization of something that was on Macbeth's mind already. They reinforce something that's already there in him. Notice, by the way, the first word of Macbeth speaks in the play. So fair and foul a day I have not seen. Mimics one of the witch's first lines. Fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air, right? It suggests that they're linked mentally and that the witches are really a symbol of what's going on in Macbeth's head, and it's not doom. They're not a dragon that breathes fire on Macbeth and he's just totally innocent of all of this. All right, so that's some stuff about tragedy and doom and Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet. Good. Also, fun fact is you'll discover in Romeo and Juliet, in the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, the whole thing where Juliet fakes her own death, um, which is an idea thought up by a priest, a Jesuit priest, a friar, Friar Lawrence. The whole idea of her faking her own death is given by Friar Lawrence, but Romeo doesn't find out about it. Now, in the movie, what happens is, in the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, the friar sends him a message, like by FedEx, and it just doesn't get him. It just, sometimes, you ever have somebody come to your house and the mailman's like, oh, I guess you're not home. And you get a little slip of paper that says missed delivery. Even if you're home, sometimes that'll happen because the fucking postmen are lazy. So that's what happens in the movie, is that his letter to Romeo explaining she's not really dead, she just looks like she's dead, doesn't get to him. That's bad luck, right? That's not personality. That's just the mail system doesn't work. And that's what causes the tragedy, because then Romeo thinks she's really dead, and then he kills himself, and then she sees that he's killed himself, and she kills himself. She kills herself. So it's not really tragedy. Now, interestingly, by the way, if you read the play, you'll discover something, I don't know, a little interesting anyway. In the movie, the reason the letter doesn't get there is because of FedEx. It just doesn't make it. But in the play, what happens is Friar Lawrence gives a letter for this guy to deliver, another monk, because he's a religious man. He's a friar, a priest, a Jesuit priest, and he gives the letter to another Jesuit priest. But that Jesuit priest had been visiting people during the plague, and he goes to visit some people, and they're sick, and he gets quarantined with them, and that's why he can't deliver the letter. So it's an instance where it's funny. The tragedy of Romeo and Juliet is on some level fundamentally caused by a disease that put people in quarantine. So I don't know what to tell you about that. Except that people don't like that. A lot of Shakespeare professors feel like that's bullshit because it's not tragedy, it's doom. It turns it into fundamentally a story about bad luck, which is not a story. That doesn't help you live your life. It doesn't tell you anything about people. It's just like, one day a dragon breathed fire on me and I died at the end. That's not interesting. So people didn't like that. Uh, but the play is still great in spite of the fact I know what they mean. The play isn't fully tragic. It has a lot of it's a weird mix of tragedy and doom that makes the all the deaths at the end feel slightly unsatisfying because it's bad luck, and you're like, man, it could have worked out a different way, right? Whereas when you read Coriolanus, there's no other way that could have gone. Like there's no way he was going to change who he was as a person. He had to die. Macbeth had to die. That's who they are. So okay, that's pretty good. I feel like I've done a solid 15-minute intro on Romeo and Juliet. I'm pretty happy with it, actually. Is that it that I want to do for intro? No. Oh, I don't know. That's it, I think. Watch the movie, rent it. Don't I didn't tell you to illegally download it or illegally stream it. I would not suggest that to you, but, So let's look at the play. Let's look at the play. Oh, the other thing we can say by way of intro, there was one more thing I want to say, which is actually the first passage in the play, is that I hope none of you, first of all, it's not a spoiler. I think everybody knows Romeo and Juliet die. But I had talked earlier about, we had a moment when I was trying to see how long Coriolanus was, and if we could fit the movie into our class time, and I sort of did a little fast forward guy to see where the credits hit, and I accidentally showed you Coriolanus' dead body. And you guys were like, "Oh shit, he dies." This is a story. People knew this story. Coriolanus is a famous Roman hero from Roman history, and everybody knew that he died. Students often read Shakespeare plays like normal movies, where you read the story to find out what happens next, but they didn't do that. They knew what happened next. Everybody knew Romeo and Juliet were going to die. It's called The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. So that was never going to go well. Same thing with Coriolanus, same thing with Macbeth. What I think helps to remind audiences that no one was surprised by how the story ended is that they tell you how it ends in the opening lines of the play. They literally, at the beginning, say, "Welcome to the theater, these two people are going to die." So let's take a look at that. And again, I'm sorry, I know I repeat myself a lot, but it's worth pointing out that what happens here, the reason people go see Shakespeare is not to find out what happens next. They know what happens next. These are famous stories that have already been told by other people. Romeo and Juliet was actually a popular poem that people read, and Shakespeare did his version of it, and now nobody remembers that original poem, because Shakespeare's version is the best. But the people knew what was going to happen ahead of time. So why did they go? For the language. You go for the language. Shakespeare's language is amazing. It's a fascinating thing to spend time with. I hope that I've emphasized for you that that's true. That's why you're here. Just like you would go see a blockbuster movie for the special effects, even though you know the heroes are going to win at the end of the story. Superheroes always win. Just like you may go see Endgame for the special effects, you may go see John Wick for the fight scenes, you go see Shakespeare for the language, and that's what we're here for. So let's take a look at the opening of the play here. Actually, you know what? That's a perfectly good point to stop this video, and I think I'm going to hit stop and make the next one.